And welcome once again to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're glad you're here, and Happy New Year if it's appropriate. We tape this show a little bit before it runs, but generally speaking, 2007 is upon us.
Well, it is indeed, and Happy New Year to you.
Thanks.
Did you bring the hats and the confetti?
I did not.
Oh, well, I forgot it as well. Oh, well. Well, we are going to deal today with an issue that is of some importance in Oklahoma. The amount of gambling, legal gambling, that takes place in Oklahoma has grown exponentially in the past couple of years. And with that, one would assume there might be an increased problem in dealing with the compulsive gambling. And we're going to talk about that today with Dr. Michael Smith.
Should be a good show. It's coming up next on The Verdict. We hope you'll stay with us. We'll be right back.
At Chesapeake Energy, here's a few of our favorite Hornets. Alexis likes reading. Sam enjoys history. Alec loves math. Chesapeake is proud to support both the Oklahoma City NBA Hornets and the Young Hornets at Horace Mann Elementary, where over 150 Chesapeake employees mentor to children each week. The students gain a lot from the experience, but not as much as we do. Chesapeake Energy, committed to building a better Oklahoma.
Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Go!
Satellite go out again?
Yeah, rain. But this is just as fun.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get the reliability you expect from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
There's a whole new world online, but it's not always safe for kids. What if someone you meet online sends a message that makes you feel uncomfortable? Tell a parent or teacher right now. It's the safe way for kids, right, gang?
Right. Be safe online.
Thanks to Lauren Nelson and Cox, we're working to keep Oklahoma kids safer online. For your free guide, log on now. And if you feel your child has been placed in danger by someone online, notify law enforcement today.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today we're very pleased to have Dr. Michael Smith. Dr. Smith is the founder of the Oklahoma Association for Problem and Compulsive Gambling here in Oklahoma. He did his undergraduate education at East Central State University. He got both his master's and his PhD at Oklahoma State University. He was with ONG and ONEOK for approximately 27 years dealing with employee relations situations. In 2004, he entered private practice, and in 2005, he founded the Oklahoma Association of Problem and Compulsive Gambling. Since that time, he and his organization have trained a number of counselors that will deal with the idea of problem and compulsive gambling, which is what we want to talk about today. Dr. Smith, welcome.
Pleasure being here. Thank you.
Dr. Smith, you office in Tulsa, but I assume this is a statewide issue and a statewide problem that you and your organization are trying to address.
It is, and you know, we might have an office there, but I can tell you I spend most of my time all over the state. And one of the things that we wanted to do with the organization was to get out there and just, as an outreach program, let people around the state know that there are people that have extreme problems with gambling, and it not only affects the individual, it affects the families, and at some point in time it's going to affect the whole state.
What's the mission of the Oklahoma Association for Problem and Compulsive Gambling?
Well, the mission is about threefold. Number one, we want to educate the state as much as we possibly can and the population of the state about problem gambling. this is somewhat of an unpopular item with some people, and it's really interesting. I was involved in dealing with the drug and alcohol treatment business about 20 years ago. Problem gambling is today where we were about 20 years ago with problem gambling, or with alcohol and drug addiction, because people just don't want to talk about it. They don't want to address it, and addiction to gambling is somewhat, for a lot of people, it's a real shame issue. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want anybody to know about it. In fact, that's one of the differences with alcohol and drug addiction and problem gambling, is the shame that goes with it, and the perception of other people with regard to the problem. And obviously, if you can't take care of your own finances, you can't take care of anybody else's finances. So there's a trust issue there.
Let me ask you to address your organization again. What size staff do you have?
Oh, it's me.
Staff of what?
I take care of the problems and take the trash out at night. But basically, we started the organization to try to create an infrastructure in the state to address problem gambling. And there's kind of an interesting story how this all started. I had been referred a young fellow, 13 years old, and for problem gambling. I thought, what's going on here? I'd never seen anything like this, and I'd been in the counseling business for quite a while. Young fella came in, and basically what he had done was he took his parents' credit cards right before they had gone on to a vacation. And he had managed to accumulate around a $30,000 debt in a period of about 7 days, gambling online. And his parents brought this young fellow to me, and he said, "What can you do?" And I started looking around the state to find somebody that had some experience in dealing with pathological gambling. I couldn't find anybody, and the more I searched, the more I realized this was an area that we had to do something in the state to train counselors that could deal with problem gambling issues, and at the same time create some kind of a helpline that could get these problem gamblers to these counselors. So that's what our association originally did.
How is it staffed?
Yeah,
I mean, literally, you're a one person. I mean, no assistance, nothing. People call you on the phone, and then you counsel them by phone.
Well, no, we don't do any counseling per se. Basically, we were the organization, and we're the Oklahoma affiliate for the National Council on Problem Gambling. We're the group in the state that has worked with the Department of Mental Health to set up the infrastructure to deal with problem gambling.
So and to train counselors.
Train counselors. And we've taken, in the last year and a half, 128 people have gone through a very intensive 60-hour training program that's really taught them how to deal with a pathological gambler. Counselors aren't usually trained to deal with the financial aspects of their clients, and this is something they're going to have to address.
How are you funded?
We're funded several ways. Number one, we're funded by the training programs that we offer, and that gets us a little way. We started this organization on part of my 401k that I had, and it was just something that I developed a passion for. So we trained some counselors. That's given us money to operate on, and then we have the tribal enterprise groups have started to become members of the association, so we could help them address training programs within their organizations to deal with problem gambling.
I take it then from what you've said that if someone is for instance, a trained, experienced drug and alcohol counselor, that doesn't necessarily translate into also being a trained gambling counselor.
Not at all. In fact, one of the things, it's really been a very interesting experience for me. And when we started advertising for this, people would say, well, I deal with alcohol and drugs, so I know everything about that. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, after they've had to deal with a pathological gambler and the issues and the problems surrounding it, they find very quickly that they're just not, they don't have those skills, that they don't necessarily transfer from one to the other. It does give you a good base to work with. But when somebody comes in with multitude of bills, they need some pressure relief, they need some assistance in dealing with family issues. One of the problems that I recognized real quickly, and it was something that I was working with a lady, She said, and she had told me, she said, I have never gambled a day in my life, but yet I have the financial responsibility of half of my husband's debts. And she said, where's the equity in that? So those are issues that counselors have to learn to deal with.
Well, how do you recognize if someone has a problem? Help our viewers begin to understand the problem.
Well, I tell you, problem gamblers are probably some of the most creative people in the world I've ever found, because they can always find a way to get some money to cover up their gambling for a while. But when somebody is absolutely just completely obsessed with gambling all the time, they want to get out there in the casinos, they start lying about their betting. I think that's one of the screens that we use is we call a lie bet. And that's any time you've ever gambled about your gambling, or any time that you've ever lied about your betting. Odds are you probably have a real problem with it.
Let me jump in here and get us to our first break. We're visiting with Michael Smith. He has a PhD. He tries to help people and help train people who can help people who have become compulsive gamblers. Runs a statewide organization. We're going to learn more about it coming up next on The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Shining is taking responsibility. At Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, we know managing your health care can be overwhelming, and it's our job to help you meet the challenge. By guiding, supporting, and showing the way, we encourage you to gain control. Because we believe the best tool we can give you is the confidence to take charge. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Oklahoma, shining through.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a flood nickel. Oh yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up. Want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
Oh, hi. I know you guys said I'd save with Cox Digital Telephone. Well, my bill came and... Could this be right?
You may be surprised how much you save with Cox Digital Telephone. That's why over 1.5 million people have switched.
So this really is a total. Lovely. Because I think I found a good use for the savings.
With Cox, there's no waiting for the other shoe to drop. The only surprise is there's no surprise at all.
1 in 4 women will be a victim of domestic or sexual violence in their lifetime.
That's too many.
That's why we want you to know that if you or someone you know is suffering at the hands of an abuser, there is help. Call the Oklahoma Safe Line at 1-800-522-SAFE for access to state and local resources that can truly make a difference. Call anonymously, call toll-free, call today, because domestic violence is not a game. It's life or death.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. Mike, I'm assuming the proliferation of legal gambling in Oklahoma has led to increased problems. Am I on pretty solid ground there?
I think that's a reasonable assumption to make.
Okay. Is there any way of measuring the issue that we're facing?
Well, all we've been able to do in the past, and again, basically over the last 18 months, this is what we're in the process of accomplishing. And the only prevalent studies we had to operate from are basically national prevalent studies. And to be real honest, I think I think our figures that when we talk about 1 to 2% of the population of the state are pathological, basically those are national studies. And to be real honest, I think due to the amount of gambling that we have in the state, again, it's reasonable to assume that we have more than 1 to 2% of the population.
Well, for instance, is there any is one game seem more addictive than the other? In other words, are there people who are addicted to the lottery, for instance?
Oh, well, sure, and you know, they just can't stay away from it. But we don't see that as much as we do with people that are addicted to playing slot machines or addicted to playing cards.
So casinos seem even more addictive than the lottery.
At least at this point in time, that appears to be the case.
Now, there are a share of the lottery proceeds, albeit I suspect a pretty small share, that is dedicated to the treatment of compulsive gambling. Is that an adequate sum of money to meet the problem?
No, in no way is it adequate. And basically, the way the lottery and the original design of the plan was, the lottery would pay up to $750,000 a year to the Department of Mental Health of unclaimed funds. So that means if they didn't have $750,000 of unclaimed funds, then whatever they had acquired went to the Department of Mental Health for treatment. With all the casino gambling, the Department of Mental Health receives $240,000 a year. So we're talking, you know, somewhere it's just not there in terms of addressing the needs of and treatment of pathological gamblers and families in Oklahoma.
Well, in the treatment of it, let's get away a little bit from your organization and get to your personal experience in dealing with problem gamblers. If a client walked in and sat down and said, I think I've got a problem, what would you expect to try to accomplish with this person and over what period of time?
Well, number one, you need to, I think, develop a real good understanding of how the client perceives themselves in all this. You know, you start dealing, like we talked about earlier, you start dealing with all the shame issues. At some point you have to help them take some pressure off of themselves. There's a tremendously high percentage of people with problem gambling issues who take their own lives. Our helpline sees that, and the helpline people that take the calls have to be highly trained in dealing with suicide. So you have to deal with some of those issues right off. Then you have to find out, in terms of the gambling, how it's affected the whole family. I mean, have you taken funds away from their kids' college fund? How are you going to address that? If you can't pay your bills, you can't make your mortgage, how's all that going to affect the family? And then you start dealing with those issues, just start peeling the skin of the onion just one at a time.
Do you, I know there's Alcoholics Anonymous, there's Gamblers Anonymous.
Correct.
Do you involve in if you were treating a client, would you involve a 12-step program?
I just, when you grow up dealing with alcohol and drug issues, and that was my primary, what I was trained to do. 12-step programs are absolutely essential to me, and Oklahoma has a real developing Gamblers Anonymous system around the state. I know as few as probably 5 years ago, there were 2, and I think we're up to about 9 now around the state. And there's groups in Muskogee, Ponca City that are starting up, one in Lawton. So that's an essential to treatment.
Maintaining what other ethical issues you have to maintain? What are some worst case scenarios? What are you seeing out there? I mean, what are some real life examples of what we're facing in Oklahoma?
Well, I'll tell you, one of I told you about the young 13-year-old kid, and you think about him going through the rest of his life. He's starting out his life with this burden on his back. But I think an issue that just absolutely broke my heart was a young woman who came in to see me after we had started this group, and she said, I want to tell you my story, and I need some help, I need some direction. She said, I grew up in the church, and I was very active in my church. My mother passed away, and I was the primary caretaker for my father. And so basically my life was spent around work, church, and my father. When my father passed away, she said, I really had nothing. And some friends took me to a casino. And she said, in a matter of 7 weeks, I had embezzled up to $16,000 from the organization that I worked for. And I'm going to prison. And I'd never gambled a day in my life. But she said, I realized something about midway through her first 2 weeks, and that was that I don't have any control over that, but I sure wasn't going to admit it to anybody. I didn't want to tell my friends that I think I'm a compulsive gambler. How do you admit that to somebody? And then she winds up doing what she did. She embezzled the money. She had lost the house that her father had left her, and her father had left her a sizable amount of money. But that's what gambling does to a lot of people. It happens so quickly and in such a short period of time. In a matter of weeks, months, people lose everything they have. And then they have to spend the rest of their life trying to put all this back into order. And an alcohol and drug addict, and it can take years to, for them to get to their limit. So this is a real insidious issue that our state's facing, and I think we're making the best steps toward at least involving people, counselors, the state, the Department of Mental Health, all the stakeholders working together to try to solve the problem.
Well, what do you foresee in the future? What's the future hold for the state with the amount of gambling that we have going on right now?
Well, at some point in time, I'd like to see the legislature at least address the issue of funding and
funding for compulsive gamblers,
for treatment of problem gamblers.
Because what you're saying is that the language that went into the legislation that created the legal gambling was supposed to address that, and your opinion is that it did not.
It did not. You're right. In my opinion, it didn't. And the reason it didn't was because I don't think people had any earthly idea the amount of gambling we're going to have and the fallout. They had looked at some other states and said, well, we may have a few, so we'll try to deal with it. And we just didn't have the infrastructure in the state to do that. Now we're working toward that. The Department of Mental Health is focusing on this. Our organization's focusing on this. The GA groups are focusing on this. A lot of the treatment programs around the state that have contracts with the Department of Mental Health are training counselors to deal with it. So were we late? Yeah, we were late. But are we going to be behind the 8 ball in a year to 18 months? No, I think we'll be right there. But we're going to have an awful lot of people aware of the issue and be willing to step up to the plate and provide some help.
Do you have a helpline that people can call?
We do.
Okay, why don't I get it during the break and we'll give it to people when we come back.
Great.
Mike, thanks for all the work you're doing throughout the state of Oklahoma helping people with a serious problem.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the forefront of that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Kent and I'll be back with the final word and that helpline number when we return.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. A place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
Just keep it. Thank you. Dr. Kessler? What's up with the pizzas?
Well, I just got my first satellite bill, and those extra fees were a bit of a shocker.
So I had to take a second job.
Hey, this was supposed to be pepperoni, dillweed.
Hey, it's Dr. Dillweed to you.
Whatever.
Kids. It's cool. I'm a people person.
Don't live in satellite denial. Get all your entertainment without the hidden charges from Cox, your friend in the digital age.
Not sure where you're headed? NATS can help you find your way. It's the National Athletic Testing System. We call it NATS. You'll call it your launching pad to success. NATS will give you a standardized evaluation that will help you measure your performance and give that information to college coaches so they can accurately evaluate your potential. NATS also helps with academic support. Join with the Oklahoma High School Football Coaches Association and head for success at www.nats.us.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We had an interesting show today with Mike Smith, who's with the Oklahoma Association for Problem and Compulsive Gambling, and he illustrated quite a problem in Oklahoma.
Well, and it's hardly a month goes by or a quarter goes by that we don't see a lot of fancy advertising about a new casino opening. It's going to be bigger and better than any that we've had before. And at last count, we were up to 80 to 90 casinos in Oklahoma, plus the lottery has commercials on trying to get you to go buy those tickets for the benefit of education. All of that's laudatory, and the people voted for it, and it's what we've asked be done in this state, but at the same time we have created a byproduct of a problem with the compulsive gambling. It's good that people like Dr. Smith are out there trying to address it. Hopefully he'll get some additional funding.
We have a phone number for you if you have someone in your family who you think might be a compulsive gambler. You can call this number 1-800-522-4700. We also like to give website information for our guest, and Mike Smith's website is www.oapcg.org. We'd also like to see you on our website, theverdict.tv. Go there, tell us about a show you'd like to see. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced by the Production Services Group at Cox Communications, exclusively for the Cox Channel.